Scott Christopher Schumann here. Compromise and not doing the right thing consistently leads to desperation, and that's what I saw in Jesus. Too much desperation that I will never respect, that I cannot respect. If he wants to lose his millennial reign of Christ, do it. You know, he should, because that's how sinful his church has been. That's how hypocritical and compromised and leavened and unwilling the church has been. For me to lose anything there, I don't see it. I just don't see it at all, because everything was exacted, and even if I didn't do as well as people wanted me to do in the competition, everything that I did wrong. The fall was everything I did wrong was made amends for. So you don't really have that on the plate anymore. That's not really on the table anymore. So it's almost like if you do your time in jail, then you get to get out, and that's kind of how I see it. And the church needs to do their time based on them, and they're going to, they're spinning it. Well, it's going to be in association with Scott, but even if it's not in association with Scott, you need to do your time based on the fact that for the last 30 years you didn't even want to have one conversation about the gospel. That is some serious time there, because that's why Jesus is desperate, because you're not justified there. He's not calling it sin, but you're still not justified, because by not doing anything, you created so many different little problems. For me, for my spouse, for so many things, you created so many little problems that you can't really be justified there in judgment. Now, God's not calling it sin on this earth, but it's not the same thing in judgment, and he knows that. And it's not the same thing when it comes to handing out rewards. If you literally phone it in for 30 years, and then after someone else is taken out who's better than you repent and you start doing the right thing, it's not really the same thing, because you got to measure the whole thing. Because at that point, it's not 7 years, it's 37 years, and God's got to judge the first 30 years accurately. And I'm telling you right now, had this church done the right thing the first 30 years, there would have been no problems, and that word will stand. And it's a huge problem for me. So if Jesus wants to stand in the gap for that, he could lose his millennial reign. I'm not going to. I just didn't do enough wrong, and that's how I see it. That's how I've always seen it. I simply did not do enough wrong or compromise enough. The church did, not me. And the way I always see it is, your compromise for 30 years is worse than my fault, because my desire was to do the work. My desire was to show up and do the work. Your desire was to compromise so much, according to Ezekiel, that I got thrust out, and you guys just destroyed anything that could have occurred. Now, God allowed it, but you're not going to be justified there ever. You guys are going to be justified for Ezekiel 34 and 13, I believe. You're not going to be justified there. I think it's mostly 34. You're not going to be justified. So that's why Jesus is willing to lose his millennial reign, because in order to save this church, he might have to do that. And in order for me to win your souls, he might have to do that. Or for your souls to be won, he might have to do that. It's not a good thing. This church has stunk up the joint so much that Jesus Christ is literally putting his millennial reign on the line, just so you guys can get saved and hopefully inherit some promises and some rewards. It's just a joke to me. It's such a joke, I'm bowing out. I already said that if I lose my millennial reign, I don't care about salvation. I was born to serve the Lord. As far as I'm concerned, my salvation was secure upon my birth. So I always had salvation. That's not really the point. The point is, if everything is stolen away from me, and if Jesus Christ allows everything to be stolen away from me, because you guys didn't do your job, because it's going to be proven, had this church not fulfilled Ezekiel, but had you been willing to do the work, you guys would have had no leverage to levy my sins against me. You wouldn't have been able to do it, because I would have been in church with you, and you guys would have been screwing up. You guys would have messed up so bad. And for those of you who think you would have just bullied me, you probably would have ended up getting in a fight outside of church, because those things carry over. Even in church, people who bullied me in church ended up getting knocked out outside of church. It happened. So believe me, if I was in church from 2000 to 2026, pastors would have been getting knocked out at the liquor store. knocked out at the mall, knocked out at Times Square, you guys would have been getting knocked out. So believe me, everything would have been different. Instead of you guys fulfilling Ezekiel and me getting taken out on the side, I would have been doing my job in the churches, and you guys would have largely been taken out. And even if sin manifested me in church, it's not the same thing. It's not, because there's accountability there. One of the biggest problems with me screwing up online is there was never any accountability. I still haven't had one conversation regarding what I did online. So there's really no accountability. I've been judged for it, but I've never had a conversation. If I made those same mistakes in church, it would have been dealt with within an hour. I would have been accountable within an hour. And the whole church would have known I committed this sin and I was held accountable. That's how it's supposed to be done. And that's where I'm in full disagreement with Jesus Christ, even unto my soul. Even unto my soul. And it's going to stand. I should have been in the churches doing the work. It wasn't my fault. It was the church's fault. And I'm never going to forgive you for it. I'm not going to forgive you for this one. And Jesus Christ knows. The only way I'll forgive you for this is if you take accountability for your fucking actions and you admit that you were full of shit for 30 years, completely full of shit. You were looking to take me out. You were looking to snipe me. You were looking to destroy me, and it worked perfectly for you. I'm not losing rewards over this. You are. And if Jesus wants to stand in the gap for that, he can lose his rewards too.